Walk into most churches today and tell me what you see. Stage lights, fog machines, in-ear monitors, click tracks running, and a congregation standing in a dark room watching the stage. That's not even church anymore. That's a concert. So I'm going to show you exactly how that happened and why veteran musicians are paying the price for this model that nobody even told us was changing. I've been a church musician now for over 35 years, and I've watched this change happen in real time. I was just at a church service a couple of weeks ago, and I walked in this church service, and there was haze and fog, and the lights was out, and the screen was flashing with all of these fancy graphics, and the worship leaders were up there with, looking like they had been styled for the Met Gala. And the preachers were standing around, everybody was on the side, and the congregation, or should I say the crowd, was really just standing there kind of watching and with their senses being arrested, which is what they call it, with what was going on in the church service. And I caught myself thinking, like, when did this whole thing stop being church as we know it? And when did it become a concert? When did the worship leader become the front man for the band? So I'm going to walk you through the 4 shifts that turn church into a concert. I'm going to prove to you that it was a deliberate model change. And I'm going to show you exactly what we lost in the change to this new concert model. And I'm going to talk about what veteran church musicians can do about it. And this is going to be the case whether you choose to fit the new model, whether you refuse it, or you want to find a church that has the old model. Now, I want to say off top that I'm not saying that contemporary worship services and all of that are just a bad thing. I'm not saying that lights and fog and click tracks should be banned or eliminated. I'm saying that we drifted into a process of this new concert model without really realizing what was lost in the trade. And the people who are losing the most are the musicians who were trained in the old model. So the first shift that happened is that the audience changed from being participants to spectators. So in the old model, the congregation sang and the musicians supported, and there was a togetherness in the worship service. But in today's new concert model, all of the lights are on the stage and off the people. The sound mix is set so that the band is like super loud and the congregation is quiet. And the room is just really engineered more for a performance than it is for participation. And it's so funny because churches talk about all the time that worship is for everyone, but they designed the room so that only the stage matters. They turned the house lights down so much that you can't even really see the person next to you. And they turned the mix and the sound up so loud that you can't even hear yourself sing. The architecture of the service says one thing, but the architecture of the room says something completely different. Imagine a basketball coach telling his whole team that, hey, everyone on this team is going to play, but then turns around and only gives the ball and only plays 5 players on the team all the time. That's modern worship. Everyone is invited to the team, but only 5 people get to play the game. And to be fair about it, some churches do make this trade that I'm talking about thoughtfully. They simply prioritize a high quality experience, which helps to draw people in. It's a legitimate strategy, but it is a trade. And nobody talks about what the congregation and what we musicians are losing in this trade. Now, the second shift that happened is that the leadership became a production. So the pastors and the leaders became executives and producers. So 15, 20 years ago, the music decisions in church were made by the musicians. The musicians taught the songs, they ran the rehearsals. And the preachers and the leaders, they taught the Bible studies and taught on Sunday mornings and preached on Sunday mornings. And everybody stayed in their lanes. Today, the music decisions in churches are made by, quote unquote, creative arts pastors and, quote unquote, experience directors. Those are actual titles in churches now. And the musician now is essentially just a content creator who reports to a non-musician executive of the church. It's crazy because every other field protects the expertise of its specialists. You don't have the executive of a hospital going in and telling surgeons how to do their job. The school principal doesn't override the calculus teacher and tell them how to teach their next class. But in church, the non-musician at the top decides everything, from what songs get sang to the arrangements to what musicians get hired. And the actual musicians are just expected to nod along. Imagine your accountant taking creative direction from a marketing director on how to file your taxes. That's what church music looks like in 2026. The people who are least qualified to make the decisions are making the decisions. And to be fair about this one as well, some of the churches and the leadership actually do stay in their lanes and their churches are thriving. The problem isn't the leadership having a vision. The problem is when they confuse that vision with their own personal preferences. Now, the third shift is absolutely crazy. So what's happened is that musicians have become visual assets. What I mean is that musicians have gone from being skilled hires to basically being cast to play a role. So in the old model, you were hired as a musician because you could actually play. In this new model, you're hired because of how you look when you play. You're hired now because of your age and your height and your style and whether or not your aesthetic matches the team's brand. And the crazy part about this one is that churches talk about all the time that God looks at the heart and not the outward appearance. And yet they focus almost solely on hiring musicians based on outward appearance. They want that elevation worship look, and they want the Hillsong church aesthetic. And they want the guy up there that can wear the t-shirt and look good in the t-shirt really well. So your skill as a musician now is just the tiebreaker. It's not the requirement. This is like the NFL team who picks the quarterback based on his arm length and his Instagram following versus how good he is as a football player. That team would lose every game, but that's church music right now. And to be clear about it, this aesthetic thing that we're talking about, it's not evil. The presentation actually does matter. The problem is when the presentation becomes the only metric and things like skill and maturity and all of that become afterthoughts. Now, the fourth shift that happened is that the music basically became a product. So songs in church used to be chosen because they served the congregation. Now, songs are chosen in church because they're trending on the charts and because they're popular and because they can, frankly, be played by a band who doesn't have to know how to play music that well. 3 chords over and over with a repeatable structure built to be reproduced, not interpreted. Churches all the time say stuff like, we want to do everything in excellence, but then turn around and choose a music catalog or music repertoire that's engineered to be played without excellence. So they pick songs that a person who's been playing the keyboard for 3 months can play, and then they turn around and complain about the music being generic. This dumbing down isn't an accident. It's the budget. Imagine a restaurant that's trying to grow, and the way that they do that is that they simplify their menu so that they can hire cooks that don't know how to cook that well. The food gets blander every year, then the customers decide to leave, but the restaurant then blames the customers. Now, this isn't a genre thing. It isn't gospel music versus CCM music. Actually, some of the contemporary Christian music is pretty good. The issue is when the music gets dumbed down in order for churches to be able to hire less skilled, cheaper musicians. The music suffers as a consequence. Now, let me tell you about the forces that were sort of the catalyst in this whole shift from church becoming traditional to this whole concert thing I'm talking about. And there's really 3 of them. And the first one is what I call the church worship label template that everybody just copied. So you had churches like Elevation, Bethel, Hillsong, and Passion Church, and all of these churches that basically turned worship service into a recording industry. They recorded albums and they charted on Spotify and the Billboard charts. And they basically built this whole brand thing that was built around style and creative directors. And then every other small church in the country decided to look at these churches and say, hey, this is what church is supposed to be like. So they didn't become churches imitating other churches. They became churches imitating record labels. And then the second force that forced this whole thing was that the production part of it made all of this possible. And then the post-COVID streaming era made it pretty much mandatory. So click tracks, multi-tracks, LED walls, fog machines, in-ear monitors, and broadcast quality cameras, all of that before 2020 was the mega church model. And after 2020, every church felt like they needed to stream to survive, and they felt like streaming required broadcast quality. The technology itself didn't cause the shift. It just enabled what was already trending, and it accelerated it past the point of no return. And this third force is absolutely crazy. And it's when the church shifted to this, what I call the seeker-sensitive theology, which gave this whole shift of spiritual cover. See, once this whole thing of we need to attract new people came into place, everything that churches did could be justified by we're trying to grow. The lights, the cameras, the aesthetics, the production, and all of that was sold internally as outreach. So when I tell you that church has become a concert, this isn't me just sitting here arguing for the old way or arguing for nostalgia or anything like that. No, this is a documented industry shift that's being driven by these three forces I just talked about. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? Which brings me to the solutions to these problems that I want to give you really, really quickly. So the first one is that you need to know which one of these models that you're in, and you need to choose accordingly. And what I mean is that you as a musician have to stop assuming that all of these churches operate the same way. Before you take a position there as a worship leader, musician, or whatever, ask the question, is this a participation-driven church or is this an audience-driven church? And both of these things have value, but they just require different things from the musicians. The architecture of the church, the lighting, the volume, and the way that the leadership talks about the experience of the church will tell you everything you need to know. So you say stuff to them like, hey, I want to make sure I understand what the vision is of the music ministry of this church. Are we building a service that the congregation participates in, or are we building a production that the audience experiences? Both of them have value. They just require different things from the musicians. And solution number two is you got to refuse to be managed by people who don't understand the work. When a non-musician, non-music person is making the decisions at your church, you need to drive how that conversation happens. Don't just accept directives. You propose collaboration. So you say stuff like, hey, I would really love to understand what you're going for here musically. So let's sit down for 30 minutes and have a talk about what your vision is. And then I can map out what's actually possible musically. And that way I'm not sitting here guessing and you're not asking for something that the band or the whole music ministry can't deliver. And if they refuse to have that conversation, or they just expect you to execute demands from someone who isn't a musician, then you got information. You're being treated like a contractor, not an actual partner. And you treat that relationship accordingly. You show up, you do the job, but don't pour your heart into a system that's set up to dismiss your expertise as a musician. Solution three is you build skills that their whole visual aesthetic strategy can't replace. They can find the young 20, 21-year-old who looks better than you. They can find the 22-year-old who can play as good as you. So what you have to do is lean hard into only what experience produces. Knowing how to read the room effectively, having a vast repertoire of gospel and CCM and church music under your belt, being able to play across multiple genres of music, and knowing how to run the service when the click track fails. So you tell yourself and you help them understand, hey, I'm not competing here on aesthetics. I'm competing on craft. I bring 15, 20, 30 years of experience to this situation that doesn't necessarily show up on my Instagram or TikTok page. And I'm worth what that experience costs. And if the church you're in only values aesthetics, take your craft to churches that still value the craft. They still exist. Some of them may be smaller, some of them may pay less, but they treat you with respect and they treat you like the musician with the experience that you have. And solution number 4 is to position yourself for the market that values musicianship. The concert church market is real and it's growing. But the musicianship-driven church and the expertise-driven church as it pertains to musician, it still exists. It just may be a little smaller, like I just talked about. So you got to position yourself for and pick the market that you want to be in intentionally instead of letting it pick you. So you got to be bold and you got to tell yourself, I will not waste time being in a system that doesn't value my musicianship. I will find rooms where what I do still matters, or I'll build those rooms myself. And sometimes the answer isn't just to stay and fight this whole concert church market if that's not what you want to be a part of. Sometimes the answer is just to walk away from it and find something else that you can be a part of. Build up your business to teach private lessons online, or build up your band trio to do weddings and receptions. You can take session work and you can teach. There's many things that you can do. The church isn't the only stage, and it may not even be the best one anymore. And here's the part that nobody talks about. When the church becomes a concert like this, we lose more than a job. We lose tradition. For generations, Black church especially built a lot of American music. Everything from gospel to jazz to R&B and soul and hip hop. All of that traces back to a bunch of musicians sitting down on a piano or organ at a church, reading the room, singing, leading the congregation, and all of that. That's not a system that survives this whole concert model. The concert model doesn't pass down the craft like that. It just produces content. And this is the part that really breaks my heart. That little kid that's sitting in the congregation in the pews that feels something when the music is playing and gets excited and maybe wants to learn an instrument. What is he going to do? Mimic a video? In this new concert model, he's not going to learn how to read the room. He's not going to learn how to comp behind a soloist and follow them correctly. He's not going to learn how to take a piece of music that's very ordinary and turn it into something very extravagant like we do as musicians, because nobody on the stage is doing that anymore. This isn't about your check. This is about whether church music as a living craft survives the next generation. I'll see you in the next video.